Hello everyone, this is the third part of the story about the conflicts in the Star Wars universe, about those conflicts that arose because of xenophobic attitudes. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment under the video. Help by donation on Patreon will also help the channel to develop. So, let's get started. The greatest xenophobes of galaxy were the Yuuzhan Vongs, whose hatred of other races cost trillions of lives and destruction of infrastructure of dozens of planets. The Vongs are well known to anyone who knows Star Wars even a little bit, but such a race as the Yavetha is known to few people, as it is not well represented in literature and reference books. We can also think of the Dug race, which anyone who has seen The Phantom Menace will recognize. Let's start with the Dugs, as xenophobia has always been a hallmark of this race. The Dugs were exotic looking and lived on Malastari. It was a world rich in natural resources and therefore constantly under attack. The first known xenophobic armed conflict in the history of the Dugs was the war with the Zehethbra. This race were sturdy anthropomorphic creatures with animal faces. They were moderately aggressive but had no hatred for other races and their cultures until the conflict with the Dugs. The Zehethbra originated from the planet Zeheth in the Dustig sector star system of the same name. In the process of colonization, the Zehethbra took over new planets rich in natural resources. One day, they became interested in Malastare, which was located in a neighboring star system to Zeheth. The Dugs were not happy with this state of affairs, and over time their discontent grew into open armed confrontation. After a series of small localized wars, the Zehethbra flew away from Malastare. In doing so, the Zehethbra took their grievances to the Republican Senate. The Senate was interested in the resource-rich planet, so it declared the Dugs an aggressive race and imposed sanctions against the planet. The Republic's sanctions, the reputation as an aggressor race, and the Senate's inattention to Malastare allowed the Grands to invade Malastare. The Dugs were not happy with the invaders, and a long and brutal local war began on the planet. As a result of this war, the Dugs were destroyed or driven to concentration camps, becoming slaves of the Grand Protectorate for almost 1,000 years. The Republic did not intervene primarily because the Ruusan Reformation was underway just during this period. It was a global process of reforming the entire political life of the Galactic Republic. The second reason for the Republic's inattention was the strong position of the Grands in the Senate, where the Dugs were not allowed after being declared aggressors. Besides, it was advantageous for the Republic itself not to notice the slave position of the Dugs and their genocide. More than a century passed when the Dugs managed to throw off slave shackles and take revenge on the invaders. But the representation of the Grands on the planet remained, and up to the Clone Wars had a great influence on local politics and economy. The xenophobia of the Dugs as a means of protecting their culture from the alien invaders has now risen to unprecedented heights. Now it becomes clear why the Sebulba racer regarded Anakin with such contempt. He was not only a competitor to him, but a vile human being. Now let's turn our attention to the Yavetha. Unlike the Dugs, the Yavetha had no reason to hate all other races. The race originated on the little-known planet N'Zoth, Farlax sector, in the Cornoct cluster. N'Zoth was far from major hyperspace routes and in a very difficult region to navigate. This was the cause of the Yavetha long isolation from the rest of the galaxy. Over thousands of years of independent development, the Yavetha began to think that they were the only intelligent race and chosen people in the universe. These beliefs were further strengthened after colonizing 11 planets in surrounding star systems where they found no intelligent life. The Yavetha were the first to be discovered by the Old Republic's research vessels. Full contact with the Yavetha occurred after the Clone Wars. The Galactic Empire, upon discovering them, immediately occupied all planets in the Cornoct cluster. The Yavetha had to accept the inevitable for a time. The Empire built factories on the planet's surface and shipyards in orbit. The Yavetha showed great aptitude for learning and mastered shipbuilding in a short time. They used the Imperial shipyards to build warships, as well as repair and modernize old ships and vessels. Imperial dominance ended 8 months after the Emperor's death at the Battle of Endor. A major Imperial fleet unit in the area was ordered by Izar to withdraw to the worlds of the Inner Ring, destroying the shipyards in its wake. At this time, the Yavetha rebelled, leading to the deaths of 20,000 Imperial soldiers, the capture of Imperial specialists, and the capture of a large fleet. The fleet numbered dozens of large warships and hundreds of auxiliary vessels. The most important acquisition of the Yavetha was the Star Destroyer Intimidator. Isar did not send a fleet to retake the rebellious planet and repel the captured ships. She had more important concerns, as there was a power struggle going on over the entire empire, between her and Palpatine's rightful deputy, Grand Vizier Sith Pistage. The Yavitha did not stop at seizing ships and enslaving their recent masters. They began to design and build ships of their own design. This is how the Armadia cruisers and Type D light fighters were born. With Imperial trophy ships and an armada of their own warships, the Yavitha believed even more in their superiority. Over the next 12 years, under the wise leader Nil Spear, the Yavitha organized a series of conquests. In the course of these, all intelligent races capable of resisting the invaders in the future were destroyed. Thus, the 11 original planets of the Duskon League were joined by dozens of planets in the Cornuct cluster. This was only the first phase of the conquests planned by Spar. In the 16th year after the Battle of Yavin, the Duskon League finally broke out of its isolation and began to claim planets outside of the Cornuct cluster. Nilspar visited Coruscant, where he managed to attract the sympathies of some of the New Republic's influential figures. He presented himself and his people as a peace-loving race, recently oppressed by the Imperials, who sought peace and mutually beneficial cooperation with the entire galaxy. Through political machinations, Spar managed to accuse Leia Organa Solo of trying to start a new war. Many citizens of the New Republic, tired of the protracted galactic civil war, expressed outrage at Leia Organa's actions. Skillful political gamesmanship allowed Nilspar to realize his intended military campaigns. The Yavithan Purge, or Great Purge, began. A huge Yavithan fleet attacked many worlds in star systems neighboring the Yavithan state. The goal of the Duskin League was to exterminate all other intelligent races living on the planets they planned to take over. After being introduced to the Empire and the New Republic, the Yavitha continued to believe that only they should rule in the galaxy and all other races should be exterminated. That same year, the New Republic declared war on the Duskin League. The war was short-lived and lasted only a year and a half. The conflict was later called the Black Fleet Crisis, after the name of an Imperial operational unit captured by the Yavitha. After the defeat, the Yavitha lost their fleet. The capsule containing the captured Nil Spar was simply thrown into hyperspace by the rebels. The Imperials, left alive by the Yavitha to maintain the captured ships, rebelled at the critical moment of the Battle of Enzoth and, after capturing the ships, escaped into hyperspace to an unknown destination. The fleeing group was very large and also had a battleship of the Executioner type. The New Republic restricted access to the recent conflict zone and placed the Yavitha under surveillance to prevent them from rebelling again. The surveillance was ineffective, however, as it did not prevent a rapid revival of the Yavithan fleet. 8 years after their defeat in the war against the New Republic, the Armadias of the new series numbered over 10,000 ships. Perhaps such a large fleet would have allowed the Yavitha to begin a new expansion into the surrounding star systems once again, had it not been for the Vong invasion. The Vong saw the Yavitha as another obstacle to their domination of the galaxy, and so sent a large fleet into League space, which defeated the Yavitha armada and reduced the surface of Enzoth to ash. The Vong had almost completely wiped out the Yavitha. Only about 10,000 of the race were able to survive the genocide. When considering the topic of interracial conflicts, one cannot help but consider the undiscovered regions. The Chiss were not characterized by tolerance to other races of the galaxy and tried to live in isolation. The Chiss reacted harshly to all attempts to violate their sovereignty. Crews of ships that accidentally visited their domain were immediately destroyed by the Chiss. The Chiss preferred isolation for the sake of preserving their traditions, culture, and protecting their own population from any foreign influence. Only once in the year 35 after the Battle of Yavin during the Dark Nest Crisis did the Chiss succumb to the xenophobic influence of the leaders of the Ascendancy. The increase in xenophobia was due to the threat of the Killiks spreading to the Chiss domains. The Dark Nest, soon after its emergence, became a major threat to the Chiss due to the Killiks' policy of unchecked expansion. Therefore, without negotiation, the Chiss began destroying hives on Killik-occupied planets with hatred and contempt. The Killiks, prompted by the will of the Jedi and a Sith who happened to be among the Killiks during the war with the Yuuzhan Vong, began to direct their loyal subjects to further expand their territories. These Force users were Raynar Thul, called Unu Thul by the Killiks, Lomi Plo, and Welk. The Killik settlements established in the Chiss Ascendancy were regularly attacked by the Chiss, but the Knights of the New Jedi Order intervened and sided with the Killiks. Although the involvement of Jaina and Jacen Solo, Lobaka, Zek, Alemarar, and several other Jedi was unauthorized, it almost led to war between the Chiss and the Galactic Alliance. The Chiss perceived the Jedi as one of many tools at the disposal of the Alliance's top political leadership, who could not act of their own free will. The appearance of several Jedi on the Killik side provoked a backlash from the Chiss on the diplomatic front, which forced the Galactic Alliance to intervene in the conflict. The situation was further complicated when the other insectoid races of the galaxy sided with the Killiks, which could have led to another galactic-wide conflict. Fortunately, the Swarm War never escalated into a new galactic war. The conflict was prevented from escalating, although in the end all sides were dissatisfied. The Chiss were angry because they had lost thousands of their tribesmen. The government of the Galactic Republic was not happy with the actions of the Jedi. A power struggle began among the Jedi within the Order, which nearly led to a split in the organization. The Killiks were offended that instead of expanding their territory and increasing the number of hives, they only suffered great losses and their civilization remained at the level as before the conflict. The other scourge of the undiscovered regions that I would like to mention is the Toffs and the Nagai. The Nagai were originally from the planet Nagi in the star system of the unknown regions. The Nagai were originally a relatively peaceful race. In Nagai society, personal honor and valor in battle, especially in close combat, were valued above all else. This led to the choice of the race's favorite weapons, short swords and daggers called tekala. The Nagai evolved alone for a long time, passing through all stages of societal development from primitive tribes to a highly advanced civilization with space technology. The Nagai reached the pinnacle of their development around the 300th year before the Battle of Yavin, inventing the first primitive hyperdrive and beginning to explore nearby planets. Although it is worth noting that small groups of Nagai were found outside their homeworld long before the invention of their own spaceships. However, the number of Nagai living outside their homeworld never exceeded a few hundred. The slave owner Phyllis Mon is known to have owned two Nagai brothers, Kor and Vor Essen. At least one Nagai became a member of the Jedi Order, a Padawan named Garn who served in the Order during the Mandalorian Wars. It is unknown how this Nagai ended up in Republic space. Most likely, he and his family were picked up by one of the many Republic scout ships that were exploring and mapping the uncharted regions who happened to visit the Nagai. But then information about the race got lost in the Republic archives or was completely lost. That all changed in the 296th year before the Battle of Yavin, when an unmanned Nagai probe accidentally stumbled upon a Toph ship. This was another race of the unknown regions whose members were very aggressive. The Toph race originated on a planet of the same name in a neighboring galaxy, Fire Fist or Companion Besh. The Tophs evolved alone and never experienced alien occupation. However, they have become one of the main aggressors of the unknown regions, engaging in the slave trade and space piracy. Compassion, morality, and pacifism were unacceptable in Toph society. Even caring for one's own body was seen as a weakness unworthy of a man. The Toph culture was greatly influenced by the geography of their home planet, rich in seas and full-flowing rivers. The Tophs have long been engaged in maritime trade and piracy. They continued to do so into the space age. Only after assembling their first starship, which outwardly resembled a sailing ship, did the Tophs begin to wonder who they could rob and find. For hundreds of years, the Tophs robbed anyone weaker than they were. In conquered territories, the Tophs gladly took everything of value. In the course of their raids, the Tophs successfully conquered and nearly exterminated two races that were at a fairly high level of development. These races were the Faerun and the Macabre. The Tophs then encountered the Nagai, and it began. Millions of Tophs invaded Nagi and other planets that the Nagai had colonized. A long guerrilla war began on the Nagai homeworld that lasted over those 100 years. Over time, the Nagai's fear and pathological hatred of the Tophs developed into xenophobia. The Nagai killed the Tophs wherever they could find them. The Tophs reciprocated. Over hundreds of years of confrontation, tens of millions died on both sides. In the course of the war, the Nagai realized that they could not cope with the invaders alone and formed an alliance with the Faerun and Macabre. The alliance resulted in a powerful alliance of the three races and a strong Nagai fleet. Perhaps the war would have continued until one side was completely annihilated, but Nagai scouts secretly penetrated the Empire's space. There they discovered that the Galactic Empire and the Rebel Alliance had reached a fundamental turning point in the war. The rebels had won the Battle of Endor, killing the Emperor. The galaxy was about to experience another burst of chaos. It was the perfect time for the Nagai to invade the Sky River, as they called the space beyond the unknown regions. The goal of the invasion was to establish support bases, shipyards, and other facilities that could help the Nagai and their allies, far from the eyes of the Toph, to build up forces to reclaim their home planets. At this point, the Rebel Alliance was busy fighting against the Empire, as well as rebuilding its own fleet, finding new allies, and confronting the Sea Rook reptiloids that had invaded Bakura. The Nagai, supported by Faerun ships, attacked star systems controlled by the Empire and Alliance. Small operational formations of Nagai occupied the outlying planets, preparing a springboard for the main force's advance and creating chaos among the Alliance members. On one of the captured planets, the Nagai encountered Lumia, a former apprentice of Darth Vader and one of the Emperor's most talented hands. Lumia became a powerful ally and an experienced military advisor. Along with her, the Nagai host allied with a large faction of the Imperial Navy, which played an important role in the events that followed. The lightning attacks of the Nagai were a huge success. One after another, dozens of planets, including Mephaut, Virgilia, Faldos, Mongaza, Kashyyyk, and Herdessa, fell under the invaders' blows. The slave trade flourished on the occupied planets, and the Nagai enslaved anyone who tried to offer them any resistance. The Nagai almost succeeded in reviving the slave trade on Kashyyyk, which had suffered a severe blow during the rebellion against the Trandoshans. The Trandoshans were rabid xenophobes, but the target of their hatred was the Wookiees, with whom they had been at war for centuries and who were captured to be sold into slavery. During the events of Kashyyyk, the Nagai first encountered Rebel Alliance forces and then large shards of the Empire. A great war began, spanning dozens of sectors of the galaxy. The confrontation intensified after Lumia's agents brought in the main Nagaian fleet. After that, winning the war with a new enemy became a matter of survival for the Alliance. The Tophs did not leave the Nagai alone, a significant portion of which flew off to an unknown destination. The search undertaken by the Tophs found not only the Nagai, but also their main opponents at the moment, the Rebel Alliance and the Empire. Along with the new opponents, the Tophs wanted to destroy the Nagai as well. The Toph invasion began with the Battle of Trenwith, where a large group of their fleet completely destroyed the 12th Squadron of the Nagai. The Tophs took no prisoners, and the Nagai had to fight on two fronts. The turning point in the war came when the Nagai forces attacked the planet Zeltros, home of the Zeltron race. The landed Nagai immediately seized key facilities on the planet, overwhelming the Rebel Alliance and local militia forces they encountered. The famous pheromones of the Zeltron race, which had enabled the 11 previous invaders to soon join in the endless celebrations of the locals, proved powerless against the warriors of the unknown regions. As the battle drew to a close, the Tophs arrived on the planet, attacking the Nagai and winning with ease. The leaders of the Rebel Alliance and the Zeltronians thanked the Tophs, but soon realized that their saviors were pirates and slave traders even worse than the Nagai. The Tophs enslaved or killed everyone they encountered on the planet. The surviving Nagai then teamed up with Rebel Alliance soldiers, Zeltrons, and a group of Hiromi. Together they defeated the Tophs and forced them to flee Zeltros. Only then did the Alliance leadership learn the reason for the Nagai invasion. In honor of the victory over the enemy, the royal couple of Zeltros announced new celebrations, which lasted for 2 months and broke all imaginable and unthinkable records in pomp and scope. The Nagai were invited along with the rest of the planet's defenders. The alliance of the Nagai drove Lumia into a frenzy. She viewed the Nagai not only as allies but almost as vassals. Lumia made contact with the Tophs and offered them a treaty against the Nagai and the Alliance rebels. The Tophs accepted her offer with distrust, but the Imperial Navy under her command refused to follow her example and fight alongside the foreign invaders. All of her squadrons and assault divisions joined the Nagai and thus the Rebel Alliance. With their combined efforts, the Allies gradually forced the Tophs to begin their retreat. The last Toph stronghold was the planet Saijo, located in the outer ring sector of the same name. On Saijo, the Toph ruler, Prince Sereno, established a well-fortified base. Positional warfare ensued, interspersed with fierce battles in space. The outcome of the battle was decided by General Calrissian, the first rogue of the galaxy. The troops under his command defeated the fleet and army of the Toffs. Next, the Allied forces stormed the Prince's palace. Prince Sereno was personally captured by Luke Skywalker. The Battle of Saijo ended the Toph threat. The remaining pirate forces were forced to retreat to the previously captured planets. Shortly after the victory over the Toffs, the Rebel Alliance was transformed into the New Republic. The Nagai were among the first to be offered full membership in the new galactic government, as well as a new home on the planet Saijo. But most of the Nagai rejected the offer, as they dreamed of reclaiming their home planet. Impressed by the Nagai's fighting skills, the Mandalorians, under the leadership of Fen Shisa, decided to help the Nagai reclaim their home planet. When the Nagai allied with the Mandalorians to liberate their homeland, Fen Shisa returned home in triumph. The Toffs had brought so much misery to the Nagai that they dreamed of retribution. The genocide of the Toffs became a matter of honor for the Nagai. The Nagai pursued the defeated, scattered, and demoralized enemy, killing every Toph they encountered. The few surviving Toffs settled on their home planet and made no further attempts to conquer anyone. The lesson had been learned. The war was brief but brutal and eventful. All of these events occurred within a single year. Thank you to everyone who had the patience to watch this video to the end. As you can see, the Star Wars universe was not far from planet Earth in terms of relations with other races. Interracial conflicts occurred for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it was an outside invasion that caused xenophobic sentiment to rise. But often the reason for distrust and even open-armed confrontation was cultural, religious, or even domestic differences between races. This has been the cause of hostility between the Gungans and the colonists who came to Naboo, as well as between the Weequay and the Hauks. There have also been some very unique interracial conflicts. For example, the war between the mechanical races Silentium and Abominor. At some point in history, the Silentium culture, based on order and symmetry, came into conflict with another civilization of living machines, the Abominor, who were brutal barbarians who preferred chaos, violence, and destruction. Symmetry and order versus asymmetry and chaos. The colossal spheroids of the Silentium faced a dangerous and powerful opponent. They were the Abominor, which assembled themselves to the size of an industrialized moon. Unlike the almost perfectly flat and smooth Silentium, each Abominor was a horrible mishmash of parts of different origin, united by a single goal: to destroy. For thousands of years of the galaxy's rich history, hundreds of interracial conflicts, wars, and skirmishes have played out across its expanses, but I did not describe each of them in detail, so as not to bore you with a huge amount of information. And this is the end of my series of videos about xenophobic conflicts. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, and comment. See you soon!